killer accused of murdering at least 12 people, sexually assaulting more than 50. 72-year-old Joseph James DeAngelo, former police officer, family man who is hiding in plain sight in suburban Sacramento.
Here's a man who commits all these crimes, and then all of a sudden, cold turkey after 86, he disappeared. That's why we thought he was dead.
Introducing Joseph James DeAngelo, a former police officer. He was responsible for multiple murders, rapes, and burglaries, operating in the California region between 1974 and 1986. Thanks to his numerous crime sprees, it was believed they were all committed by different criminals, before realizing later through DNA it was the same person. In San Joaquin Valley he was known as the Visalia Ransacker. In Sacramento as the East Area Rapist, and as the Night Stalker in the Santa Barbara region. After he was identified with the help of forensic genetic genealogy, a 72-year-old Joseph James DeAngelo was arrested, and charged with 8 counts of murder in 2018, and pleads guilty in 2020.
Murder in the first degree, how do you plead?
As part of his plea bargain, which spares him the needle, Joseph confesses to additional crimes. Crimes he was never formally charged with. Join me, as we explore the life and crimes of Joseph James DeAngelo. Welcome, to Simply Told. Joseph James DeAngelo was born on the 8th of November 1945, in New York, to proud parents Kathleen Louise DeGroat, and Joseph James DeAngelo, a military officer, serving in the United States Army. It's believed that sometime during his teen years was the moment his criminal career begins. He attends Mills Junior High School in 1959, then later enrolls at Folsom High School in 1961, graduating in 1964. He joins the U.S. Navy in September 1964, and serves for a period of around 22 months, stationed on the USS Canberra and USS Piedmont. After his stint in the Army, Joseph enrolls at Sierra College in California in 1968, obtaining an associate's degree in police science. Then in 1971 he lands up at Sacramento State University, where he earns himself a bachelor's degree in criminal justice, followed with a postgraduate course at the College of the Sequoias, in Visalia, before completing his police internship. Joseph was now a cop, stationed in the burglary unit between 1973 and 1976. Then after relocating, he serves in Auburn, between 1976 and 1979. It was during this period Joseph does something stupid, and gets arrested after he was caught shoplifting, and receives 6 months probation. Due to this unfortunate offense, Joseph was let go from the police force later that year. And as one can imagine, he wasn't happy with the thought of losing his job. I mean, all those years of studying. Gone. Joseph was understandably displeased with the ruling, and threatens the chief of police, allegedly stalking him afterwards. Between 1990 to 2017, Joseph worked as a truck mechanic at a Save Mart supermarket distribution center. In May 1970, Joseph meets nursing student, Bonnie Jean Colwell at Sierra College, and proposes. But barely a year later in 1971, she walks away from the relationship claiming Joseph had become very abusive.
I got out of it, but to be engaged to him ever is a regret I'll always have.
Joseph eventually bounces back, later tying the knot with Sharon Marie Huddle in November 1973, and settles down in Citrus Heights. Life seems to be going good for the young couple. It wasn't long until Sharon births the first of their 3 daughters they would inevitably have. She also completed her studies, becoming a divorce lawyer in 1982. But unfortunately the marriage eventually hits rock bottom, separating in 1991. Sharon only finalizes their separation in July 2018, after his arrest. So Joseph had a set MO, more or less. He'd use parks and walkways, scaled walls, created various points of entry, like unlocking and opening windows and doors. He left no fingerprints at the crime scene, leading to the assumption that he was wearing gloves. On the 11th of September 1975, 45-year-old Claude Snelling's home was broken into by none other, Joseph James DeAngelo. Claude Snelling, a college professor, previously encountered a prowler peeping through his daughter's window earlier that year. But then, on the 11th of September 1975, Claude suddenly wakes up after hearing strange noises. He then gets up to investigate. As he exits the room he heads towards the back door, as it was noticeably open. He turns the corner, to see a man wearing a ski mask standing in his driveway, trying to kidnap his 16-year-old daughter, Beth Snelling, threatening her with violence as he forced her away.
Beth Snelling woke up to a man covering her nose and mouth, with his hand whispering in a low, raspy voice, "You're coming with me. Don't scream or I'll stab you."
Joseph sees Claude, points his gun at him and opens fire, with 2 rounds successfully hitting his target. Now wounded, Claude staggers back inside, and makes his way to his wife where he later dies. Joseph makes his getaway leaving his stolen wheels, a bicycle, behind. Soon after the incident, the Visalia Police Department ups their game and offers a $4,000 reward. Around $20,000 today. They also placed officers in unmarked cars to stake out homes that had previously reported prowlers. Dumping this much resources to catch the ransacker almost worked out in the end, because on the evening of the 12th of December 1975, an intruder was seen entering the yard of a home located on Kauai Avenue. Unbeknownst to the intruder, an officer on stakeout was stationed at that house. Inside the garage, Detective William McGowan spots the suspect making his way across the backyard. He fires a warning shot, surprising Joseph, who then signals his intent to surrender and removes his mask. But what the officer didn't know was that Joseph had his weapon already drawn, and without warning fires a round near the detective's head, hitting the flashlight the detective was holding. The intruder makes his getaway before nearby officers could respond. The East Area rapist's MO was to prowl homes located in well-off neighborhoods, peeping through windows of homes surrounded by open spaces, like parks, creeks, schools, etc. It's believed that Joseph would stake out the homes in advance, by looking through windows, and familiarizing himself with the surroundings. This was based on the numerous times a prowler was observed in the neighborhood. It's even believed that sometimes, he'd pre-break into homes, unlocking various places of entry, and hides items in the house he'd need for the later burglary. He'd even phone the owners to familiarize himself with their schedule and routine. At first he'd target homes of women he knew would be alone or with kids, but he ups his game even more by targeting couples. But realistically it's believed he changed his MO because of the numerous news reports claiming he only targets single women. So he'd break in, usually through the window or sliding door, and proceeds towards the main bedroom. He'd ordered the female occupant to bind her male companion, before she herself was bound, gagged and blindfolded. He'd stack dishes on the male companion's back, with threats of killing the entire family if he heard them rattle. He'd take the woman, usually to the living room where he repeatedly rapes them. Afterwards he'd hang around, spending hours going through their belongings, eating their food, drinking their booze, and if he's in the mood, rape the woman one more time. His victims would at times believe he's gone, only for him to suddenly reappear from the darkness. But when he does make his exit, he does so without the occupant's knowledge. On the night of the 2nd of February 1978, Brian Maggiore, a military policeman stationed at Mather Air Force Base, and his wife, Katie Maggiore, had taken their dog for a walk in the Rancho Cordova area. Joseph confronts them, but the couple chooses to flee. He gives chase, fatally shooting them. Then on the 30th of December 1979, Joseph strikes again, breaking into the home of 44-year-old Robert Offerman and 35-year-old Deborah Alexandra Manning. They were both found shot to death. During the investigation, police was puzzled when they noticed paw prints belonging to a large dog was found, giving detectives the impression the prowler brought one along with him. Then again later, on the 13th of March 1980, Joseph breaks into a Ventura home belonging to 33-year-old Charlene Smith, and 43-year-old Lyman Smith. They were both found bludgeoned to death in their home, with evidence proving that Charlene was raped. What interests the detectives was the unusual knot used to bind Charlene's wrists, giving the perpetrator the name, Diamond Knot Killer. On the 19th of August 1980, in a home located in Dana Point's Nagel Shores gated community, 24-year-old Keith Eli Harrington, a medical student, and 27-year-old Patrice Briscoe Harrington, a nurse, were found bludgeoned to death. The couple were newlyweds, married for only 3 months at that time. The next year, on the 6th of February 1981, 28-year-old Manuela Wittoon was found bludgeoned to death in her home, with the perpetrator leaving her TV set in her yard. This could have been an attempt to make the crime appear to look like a botched robbery. Later that year, on the 27th of July 1981, an additional 2 murder victims were discovered in a Goleta home. They were 35-year-old Sherry Domingo, and 27-year-old Gregory Sanchez. The investigation reveals that the intruder entered their home via the bathroom window. Detectives determined that Gregory knew who he was dealing with, and chose to fight back, which gets him shot. Sherry was raped before she was bludgeoned to death. On the 4th of May 1986, in a home in Irvine, 18-year-old Janelle Lisa Cruz was found bludgeoned to death. Later investigations revealed that she was raped. Police wasn't making the connection at the time, but a Sacramento detective had a strong hunch that the Goleta attacks was the East Area rapist. With the Santa Barbara Police Department pinning these murders on a known criminal, that later dies. Police from different jurisdictions were following dead leads as they were unaware of the murders in their neighboring counties. One person was charged for 2 of the murders, but later cleared. All these cases would eventually be linked using DNA forensics technology. On the 15th of June 2016, additional information related to the crimes was released by the FBI, plus a $50,000 reward was offered for any information related to the crimes. Detective Paul Holes and Steve Kramer from the FBI took the DNA collected from the numerous crime scenes and uploads them onto a personal genomics website called GEDmatch, identifying at least a dozen potential suspects.
Investigators found DeAngelo using DNA from crime scenes decades ago, which they submitted to a publicly shared genealogy website called GEDmatch. GEDmatch users submit DNA profiles they buy from sites like Ancestry.com and 23andMe. They plug their data for free into GEDmatch, searching for distant relatives. Within days, investigators found distant cousins of the suspected Golden State Killer.
By taking age, sex, and address into consideration, helps investigators rule out potential suspects. Leaving Joseph James DeAngelo. On the 18th of April, DNA was collected from the door handle of Joseph's car, and later from a discarded tissue. Both samples positively matched the Golden State Killer's.
They used the information from the crime scene, and they took the raw data and uploaded it to this open source website and used portions of the information to match it to other individuals, a so-called family match. And through that, they were able to assemble sort of a family tree of suspects and then individually pursue those portions of the family tree that they thought were the most likely. They were looking for a male, they knew that from the DNA evidence, and then they were looking for somebody who lived in the particular geographic area where the crimes were committed. So from that, they identified a main suspect, and then they followed this individual, and they were able to recover some of his personal DNA that he disposed of, and then matched it up to the DNA from the crime scene.
On the 24th of April 2018, Joseph James DeAngelo was arrested and charged with 8 counts of murder, with the Santa Barbara DA's office adding an additional 4 counts. Due to the statute of limitations, he could not be charged for any rape or burglary, but he was charged with numerous counts of murder and kidnapping. On the 29th of June 2020, Joseph pleads guilty to 13 counts of murder, plus 13 kidnapping charges. On the 21st of August 2020, Joseph was sentenced to serve multiple life terms behind bars, without the possibility of parole.